All right, this is the Advisory Committee on Sustainability for the Town of Darien. It is their regular meeting, April 14th. We're calling the meeting to order at 12:05 p.m. By go-to meeting only, as indicated on our agenda, as posted with the town clerk. The first item on the agenda is to approve the last meeting minutes, which were appended to the email. We'll take any comments on the minutes.
Shall I make a motion to approve them?
Sounds great.
I'll second that.
Okay. Carolyn, you ready?
Yes.
Good. Any mop up? Any mop up? Nothing worth saying? All right. All right. So all those.
She does have something. I know she does.
I know she'll send it to you. She'll send it to you.
What is it, Carolyn? What is it?
Should I say it?
Yes.
It's such a technical little thing. I didn't want to mention it, but under C2, where you say the green team will help distribute them, meaning the food scrap postcards, I don't know that we really extracted a promise from green team members to do that. There were some green team members, like Leslie McCarthy, who puts together the, submits the materials for the welcome packets, and she also does a lot with the Darien Garden Club. She specifically offered to help, but
might I suggest we then change the green team to we will collaborate we will work with our collaborators to help distribute them.
Perfect. Yeah, that was the only thing. Sorry, and it was so little I wasn't going to.
Motion to approve the minutes as amended. All those in favor, put your hand up. All right, the minutes are approved. Thank you, Carolyn. Never bite your tongue around us.
They were so good. I just didn't want to. I didn't want to, say anything.
As with our last meeting, I want to try to save half an hour to go through the sustainable CT action items for the kind of 2022 anticipated filing of an updated application. So I do want to make our conversations and updates between now and then more brief than normal. So with that in mind, communications with like organizations, anything to report? I saw 2 awesome PowerPoint presentations. You should send those to the whole group, Carolyn.
Do you want me to?
I do want you to. They're perfect. There was one. There were two PowerPoint presentations. One given to CCSMM on the food scrap program. One given to Oxbridge Elementary School students. Both were well tailored to their audience. Simple, perfect. You've got the roadshow down to a T. I really like them.
Yeah, you don't hear the narrative. There was a narrative that accompanied them, but you get the gist of it. So
I'm sure it was fine.
I'll send them around.
Okay, send them around. They're fantastic. I mean, they're easy to create a narrative for. I mean, they're very as you look at each slide, it makes perfect sense.
Right. Okay, I'll send them around.
Yeah, send them around. I thought they were great. Anything else worth mentioning on the communications front?
I think so. The green team has been made aware of the application we intend to submit for sustainable CT. Mm-hmm. And they've been requested to look at the categories around water, preservation, conservation, all of that. And they've started giving me some information about things that they're aware of that either have happened or are happening. So we've started that. That's
awesome. Yeah, having more collaborators, I think will make this a very successful round, and we'll go over that when we get into item number 8. Anything else worth reporting? Yes, Kathy.
This sort of overlaps with Carolyn, but it is communication with a group within Sustainable Fairfield that both Carolyn and I have been speaking with, specifically a subgroup of that organization, and Carolyn can update this, but that there multiple communities are looking for ways to have an impact in the world of food scrap recycling, food waste recycling, and food scrap recycling, whether it's called composting or a number of things, and are looking for ways to, whether it's find trial programs or grant funding to do, whether it's outreach or, you know, any number of ways of expanding awareness of, and we go in circular conversations about how much capacity there is versus how much outreach to improve the use of the facilities that exist. But we'll keep posting. There's nothing specific to report. I could not attend yesterday's meeting, but the idea, or no, that was a different meeting, sorry. But point being, keeping it short, that there is ongoing conversation to see if there's ways to work together, and specific to that through Tammy Thornton. I know Carolyn's been doing this as well, looking at specific organizations that can train, whether it's restaurants or schools. That kind of gets on to Board of Ed outreach, next topic about are there specific.
Go for it. Item number 3, Board of Ed outreach.
Okay, so which gets to how ways to use the experiences in Rowayton, the things that have happened in Oxbridge to take, we've got the EV bus thing and we have the food scrap thing, to make a more concerted approach to our department, whether it's, again, I don't know which way to go first, the Board of Ed, the superintendent, with sort of a higher level conversation that could include, you know, been working towards the EV, but some of the school stuff might mean a broader introduction of the things that are happening through sustainable CT in our peer communities, like the Rowayton Elementary School, and the references they could provide, the things they're doing. So I think
you might just start with that question, right? Whether you're talking to the superintendent or a member of the Board of Ed, you might just start with the question, who should we talk to first? You know, that might be the easiest way to go.
Right, and it's sort of, I think it comes back to this committee thing, how, you know, how I know we all want to approach them and we all keep getting in circles, but the information from the other groups was sort of empowering. I thought, Carolyn, I don't know about you, on some of the work being done in other schools. And obviously the Oxford thing is a good example here. The work, the food scrap recycling that's going on at the Darien High School as a project is another example. But to take it back to this committee, trying to engage in a relationship with our school department, I think we have some good examples, both the EV side and the food scrap recycling side. And you're very direct, just ask who to talk to, and I'm like, how do we figure out how to talk to them? So help.
Okay. I'm happy to ask that question, so that's fine.
Yeah, because there really are some positive stories that can turn into very concrete conversations for planning with our own school department, whether it's on the bus side or on the food waste side. And these are longer term conversations, but you know, we got to start somewhere. And that is probably that would be kind of for us in this committee's sustainable CT application, you'd be looking at things that might apply next year.
No, this is the perfect kind of time as we're looking at the 2022 stuff and developing, you know, kind of our action plan for the 2022 stuff. This would be the time to involve them as collaborators on the items that might apply to them, and you know, have that conversation. It's the perfect time.
Yeah. Carolyn, would you have any more comments on the food in the school and the presentation?
No, I mean, I think you kind of, you know, summed it up nicely. You know, there are some really big success stories out there with, like you said, Rowayton and especially Wilton and now Westport, who have both communities have food scrap recycling in all of their schools at all levels. And again, you know, I think it goes back to seeing what works and just trying to figure out how that can apply to our community. And you know, Kathy said it right, you know, it's like, where do we start?
This is Carolyn's awesome presentation that was given to the,
That was when we visited.
yeah, that's
Wheeler.
Wheeler Grader, so it shows them where the trash goes that gets burned, exactly what it looks like. It's lots picture heavy, pictures worth 1,000 words for the kids. It's great. And then we talked pictures of what food scraps is, how you do it at home, going right through the process, where you take it at the dump, things to avoid. We even got a picture of Seth, where it gets composted. Got a picture of Raphael in the dirt. It was great. Anyway, I wanted to share that because I liked it so much.
Thank you.
And it's good for Channel 79 too. All right, I'm going to move on to the agenda. Anything specific on food scraps other than those presentations, Carolyn?
Just that the Dairy and Nature Center has a big Earth Day event coming up, not this Saturday, but next Saturday, the 24th. It is, because of COVID, it is limited to 100 families. And they asked that I bring a couple of kits to have available for sale there. And also I can take orders, pre-orders, you know, if people want one, but I don't have one for them. Just another way to promote the program.
So, I'm sorry, repeat the dates again?
Oh, it's a Saturday, April 24th at the Dairy and Nature Center. And we'll have posters also that kind of like walk people, explain the program, and I can bring some of our postcards to hand out as well.
You need some assistance?
Maybe. Maybe. Let me talk to the person who's overseeing this area, and I'll get back to you. So would you be available to help that day?
I can try. That's all I would say. I have to figure out what's up with my kids, but if it's something that, you know, we need help with,
That would be great.
Aim for trying the 24th. You said not this coming weekend, the following
Yeah,
weekend.
and there's like 2 shifts. I'll be there the whole day, but like if you can only come for like, you know, one of the shifts, that would be awesome. So I'll
put it in.
I'll talk offline.
Okay. Yeah, great. Keep me posted.
All right, item number 5 on the agenda. Dan is not with us, but I'll ask Ed if there's anything to report on the swap shop, any concerns or how it's going.
Yeah, it's uneventful from the last meeting, but I am waiting for Dan to get back. He was going to start looking to possibly extend hours if he could get more volunteers. I haven't heard back from him just yet, but I know Jamie's looking to, you know, maybe not go back to 6 days a week, but kind of slowly roll it back into the normal schedule that we used to have, and be cognizant that we're still, you know, in the midst of this pandemic and making sure that we have proper distances followed, masks and so on. So I will say that the vests are quite effective from my standpoint. I can see them from the cameras now on top of the DPW garage, so I can watch who's
So
doing
you know who
what.
the volunteers are versus the shoppers. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can see who's making their way to the vehicles and who's not making their way to the vehicles. But those instances have been few and far between, so that's good. That's good news. Yeah, I think the one complaint, Craig, that we had gotten this past month was somebody parked outside, walked in and took some stuff from the swap shop, much to the chagrin of the lady that brought it. So we get those all the time. I don't have a horse in that race. As long as it leaves as you know, the dump without me having to put in a city carting truck, that's a plus for me.
Yeah, understood. All right, thank you, Ed. Anything on analysis of our solar arrays?
We are getting close to a time frame where I can actually run a couple analysis. I need a couple more months. I want to get through the summer and see how it reacts to the sun all the way up. I mean, you could see the drop during the wintertime. I want to see the peak in the summer. I haven't gone through a full summer with all 3 arrays working. And the other piece is the town center side. I did have a quick conversation with our vendor about meeting and taking a look at that. So that's probably going to happen, I'd say, in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir. Anything to report on EVs or EV charging stations, either money or plans?
I do not have anything else to add to that right at this moment.
Okay.
Frank, can I
yes,
ask
Kathy.
Ed a question? It's not
Yeah.
EV related, but it's recycling related. It's not swap shop related either, but just a
Sure.
general what goes in. I've been having some conversations. They don't relate necessarily to our recycling center, but they may. So this is why I want to ask. We're looking at, I've been speaking with people who are speaking with DEEP, who are looking at grant funding and recycling options for the white shrink wrap that comes off of boats and other things that are wrapped. And I'm just wondering, does any of that come to our facility at all? Obviously, if it's a yacht club or something, they probably have a private hauler. But the idea of that a lot of that heavy plastic, does it get to our facility or not at this point?
I can't tell you that I have knowledge that we do receive it and get a lot of it, nor have I gotten any complaints from city carting that it's showing up here in great abundance. So right now I can say that it hasn't been an item that has triggered any type of oversight at our transfer station at this time.
Yeah, and I suspect it doesn't come to our transfer station. It's going other ways, and it can't go into single stream recycling, and it shouldn't go into garbage. It's sort of like the propane tanks issues of where it goes.
The general conversation of plastic films, right? It's theoretically able to be reused, but the market for it is so saturated and unavailable that it's not even worth them bailing it separately, right?
Although there is a company called TerraCycle, and there are people who are turning that particular thing into resin and are looking for secondary markets, are working with DEEP, working with Rhode Island, working with Massachusetts on ways to collect it and have a market for it. So I've been involved in those, and I was just interested from Ed's point of view. My suspicion is the commercial stuff doesn't come through our facility, which is what I assume the answer would be, that it's going other ways.
In my time, I have not observed an abundance of it.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That's just was interested in, it's going other ways. It's just not coming through the town of Darien necessarily, because the commercial person's gonna have their own stuff hauled. If it's a boat club, it's going a different way. Okay, thank you.
All right, we're down to item number 7 on our agenda, which is marketing, outreach, and education. I think the only ongoing thing is whether or not there's the articles with Darien Neighbor magazine getting written or produced, and who's on point on that for this quarter.
They're getting written, just not always by someone on our committee. They're being written by various members of the Green team.
Cool.
So Kathy brought something up, and this is probably the appropriate point to mention it, but she had mentioned the propane canisters. I just wanted to make everyone aware that the stewardship bill that was proposed in the state legislature this year has actually made it out of committee.
Okay.
So I know we're not our mission is not to lobby for things, but as individuals we can. So, if anyone wants to contact, your representative and or state senator and just, encourage them to support this, it would.
Can you remind us which bill we're going to tell them to support?
Yes. So this is HB 6386.
6386.
Yes.
And this would be to create a stewardship law for small pressurized
and tires. And tires. The third material that was originally included in that, smoke detectors, The language is such that it's not, a stewardship framework will not be provided necessarily, but that DEEP will evaluate the need for. So, but it would provide the framework, stewardship framework for both propane canisters and tires. And as of yesterday, it was reported out of the legislative committee that right before it gets like a file number. So it is progressing slowly, but it is out of committee and it is viable.
Okay.
Carolyn, the number again?
8G,
from my
it's like
thing.
House Bill
Yep.
6386.
I couldn't, thank you. I couldn't find my pen as you read the number. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Carolyn.
You're welcome.
All right, so now on to the main event. I'm going to call up the very boring spreadsheet again as we go through it. Hopefully you don't get too cross-eyed as we look at it. And again, the mission here, at least with this time we're spending on it, is to decide, is it worth considering to pursue the action, and then identifying an ACS member that is going to take the lead on pursuing it, but also trying to identify a partner or collaborator that would make sense. And consider pursuing, let's frame that also, which is it's not necessarily, is it worth pursuing? Because a lot of these certainly are worth pursuing. I think it is, are we likely to be able to get points under it by the time we're applying to sustainable CT, in the middle of next year. So just going through this, Kathy had volunteered to take on the action items under inclusive and equitable community impacts as worth pursuing, and she was going to investigate. We decided that there's nothing to do on brownfield sites in Darien. Cliff was already pursuing sustainable purchasing, so he'll continue to do so, and take a look at what that means in sustainable CT parlance in terms of how you score points. We talked about 2.3 and 2.4 as being items that perhaps the Darien Chamber of Commerce could participate with us, and Christine was going to follow up on that. We didn't see a relationship to sustainable workforce development. I was going to look into our continued progress in the CPACE program. This is what Cliff had referred to earlier. We're going to get to plenty because there's 10, right? So I just wanted to do a quick review. Cliff was going to work with the Green Team on items related to watershed and see if they're able to collaborate on some of those action items and if they make sense. I think this is almost close to where we left off last night. I'm willing to talk to, so develop an open space plan. I was initially going to talk to planning and zoning about that and to see what we have and what they would be willing to help with. Some of this gets to areas that we probably aren't going to do. I mean, there's one here, 3.4.4b, increase preserved open space in your community. There's a rolling credit. So, looking at the purchase of Highland Farm seems to, I'm imagining that maybe we're going to get some credit for that. I haven't read the task item, but I will to see if we would get credit for that. Legally protecting municipally owned open space is a whole nother step that, we may or may not want to take in a lot of these cases because land available for municipal use is sparse, and if it's a usable piece of land, we don't want to foreclose future options for needed municipal services and infrastructure. But I was going to take a look at some of these, I guess is the point. Improve open space parcels. You know, that could be work that Parks and Rec is already doing, so that's worth taking a look at. Establish an open space acquisition fund, to me seemed like a heavy pull. I've been involved in conversations going back years. The general Board of Finance was never really keen on developing an acquisition fund because they felt like if it was a really good idea, you could allocate the money when you needed to, like the purchase of a Highland Farm. But if you just accumulate money over time, maybe you start paying for things that aren't necessarily the really good idea that you would vet through the normal process. So that was kind of a no, so I took it off the list. So moving through some of these. All right, so now let's get to 3.5.
Craig, before you move off of that, do you think that any of this, the way I read it, would include work that the land trust does and any of the protection of lands or cleanup of those properties or other things? I'm not 100% sure that that's all municipally done stuff or not. I mean, that may take a call to Sustainable CT.
Yeah, so, well, I mean, I think that all of these, there needs to be some municipal involvement for the municipality to get the credit, but it doesn't mean that, you know, there could be just some form of support, whether it's advertising or collaborating, or, you know, it was a town dumpster that picked up the stuff that came off of, you know, Dunlap Wood, you know, like there just needs to be some proof of municipal support. But I do have the DLT on a few of these.
Oh, okay. I see what you did.
Yeah, as supporting a collaborator until it started, you know, very specifically talking about municipal parcels.
Yeah. I see. I didn't understand column C.
It's hard to see on the screen. I totally get it. And this will get emailed around again once we're done. So 3.5 is a very interesting one. Create a natural resource and wildlife inventory. This kind of goes above my pay grade or specialty on what even would be involved in that and who would manage it or deal with it or do it. So I don't even know enough to say it makes sense or it doesn't make sense, and who our best collaborators might be to do it. I don't know if maybe someone wants to show these to the Nature Center to see if it's something that they would provide advice on, like, oh yeah, maybe that could be done because so-and-so is doing this, or maybe like, oh, that seems like a lot of work for not a lot of benefit. So I don't know if we want to reach out.
I mean, I could reach out to the Nature Center. I mean, if you want.
Yeah, and what about any of our commissions, like if coastal, that have they done any of that kind of work at the commission level? Again, I don't know.
So the first collaborators I put in here were EPC, the Environmental Protection Commission, RJ, Rich Jacobson, the staff member for the Environmental Protection Commission. As the most likely participant, but you know, they largely focus on their land use role, which is, you know, wetland permits and P&Z referrals. They don't typically focus on kind of their broader conservation commission authorities, but I put them there as potential collaborators. But anyway, yeah, we'll start with the Nature Center.
And Craig, where is this Excel spreadsheet housed? You know,
well, that's another great question. Like, we should probably start sharing it, right? So
just so that I can have, you know, the exact vernacular to speak to.
Well,
them.
it is we
appended to the minutes.
Yeah, it's on the email invite from yesterday, and Cliff.
Is it? Okay.
Yes,
Did I not see that?
Yeah,
okay.
This Excel spreadsheet is attached to a couple of emails over the last month or so, but you can also, anybody, right, can go to the Sustainable CT website under.
No, I just meant with our notes of like who's doing what.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. But this is how you get like the more information, right? So this is how you would go, like we were just talking about, create a natural resource wildlife inventory, right? And you can go right in here and it tells you, you can get a PDF.
Okay.
And it explains exactly, this is what you need to do. You know, you need to create a base map. You need to talk about the land cover and the soils and the water resources. And so it tells you exactly what you have to do to get points. So
Great.
when you're talking to the Nature Center, you would want this PDF and say, is this something that you know of someone doing? Is this something that you think we can do? Who would our best collaborators be to get all this stuff done? And then we can make a decision as to, you know, do we try to, the amount of work involved, is it worth pursuing the 10 points or not, right? So, I mean, definitely anyone who gets involved in this, I just wanted to show you the website again, just because that's where you get the real how-to of scoring points.
The other thing might be, there may be, if you go in a different direction, you can look for past actions for 3.5. So you might be able to find an actual real thing that someone else did and got certified. Another place on that seems to be, and this was kind of something we heard in relative to food scrap recycling, is sometimes programs like that may happen in some way with biology class or something that they might have done, they might do some work. A
lot of this we found last time was there's a lot being done out there. You know, like the library inviting all these talks in and inviting the community. Those are points, you know.
Right.
So yeah, what you were referring to, Kathy, was these CT success stories, which again is the same thing. You go right in, you pick a action item, and it's right here on the left. You can go to CT success stories. Here are actual submissions from actual towns that got actual points, right? So you can go and say, you know, here is what, you know, this town did on creating a drought restriction ordinance, and here is their actual submission, right? So we don't have to create things from scratch. We've got guides, we've got clip notes, we can plagiarize, you know, it's all public information. So that's where you go. And again, it's about, you know, unfortunately, this is based a little bit on game theory, right? It's points towards a goal. Not that everything isn't worthy, but we have to, if we're focused on making an application in a time frame for a certain result, we, in some level, have to play the game of acquiring points.
And I'm also thinking someone like Chris Filmer, who does a lot of work in the parks, may have done some of this wildlife inventory. I don't know that you necessarily have to inventory the entire town of Darien to the degree that if someone has done this and they've counted all the birds in Selleck's Woods, and they go
so it says inventories must be townwide.
Okay.
So again, I mean, this would have been something, that's why I kind of put EPC in first, right? Like, so, and again, so, you know, maybe, again, you got to, this is the whole point, like one person can't go through 200 items, read all of the sheets and decide what we have done or can do or can't do. And that's why I'm trying to spread the love and get other people to actually go look at the sheets and say, achievable, not achievable, right? That's the idea. And we can't have a, you know, we also can't sit here and talk for 20 minutes on each item and decide if it's achievable or not, right? We got to kind of trust each other and trust our collaborators. So drought and water use, you know, the BOE, I think, has done some stuff, or not the BOE, establish a formal or informal policy to utilize water sense labeled fixtures and replace fixtures. So Ed, for example, would it be possible for the municipal side of town to establish a formal policy that says when we buy a toilet, it's got to be a water sense toilet?
Okay. I don't see why we couldn't have a policy. It needs to be a little bit more general. I mean, we used to call them low flow.
Yeah.
I don't know where water scents come from. I don't want to
It's
say.
an EPA, it's an EPA distinction.
Okay,
It's a label.
so having a policy that says for new construction, I think, as you know, not all low flow systems work in every situation, but I think a policy says that needs to be looked at first. I don't see that as a problem.
Yeah. So I guess what I would ask you to do, and I can send you the PDF, is again, like, let's get the task item PDF from the website and then take a look at that and say, yeah, I think this is something we can do or can't do.
The other half of that piece where it says replace all toilets, blah, 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 equivalent upon their scheduled or unscheduled replacement, that may be just a little more difficult because that's going to be driven by funding and budgets.
Yeah, and you might say, we've got a 20-year program and we're going to do 5% a year, or, or you might not. You might say it's too big of a pull, that kind of thing.
Or as simple as a purchasing list that's your priority list that says, when one breaks, these are the preferred products, that just goes to some developed thought process, I think is really all it boils down to.
Well, yeah, provided the all boils down to matches exactly what the task item sheet says, right? Because they can get very specific on what counts and what doesn't count. This is what I was talking about. Drought communications usually falls to the first selectman when we're in a drought. So that's a potential collaborator on this task item. Is there someone that wants to look into the how-to-fors of managing for drought and decide if it's something worth pursuing?
I can do that.
Okay.
3, 6.
Carolyn, wouldn't that go along with some of the stuff that Aquarian did when they came last year? Those contacts of what they were working on that you worked on.
2 years ago, Kathy.
Was it 2 years ago?
Yeah, 2019.
Yes, that would be the provide education on water conservation, and we did get points for that 2 years ago.
We did.
But we're not going to get points on it again unless we do it again.
Right.
And that's the whole point. So that, again, it goes down to, is there a collaborator willing to do that again? And that's when is there, who sets the curriculum at the library, for instance, or the curriculum at the nature center? And is it possible to talk to them about, like, well, hey, because if you go through this whole list, there's probably 10 times when it says, community education. And so is it possible to go through this list and identify each task that's related to community education, and then talk to a nature center or a library about, okay, well, over the next 12 months, can you take 3 of these things and put it into your cycle? And then we would get the credit for that. So
I'd love to go to the library program directors with kind of this whole inventory and maybe a couple of PDFs and just say, we're really talking a year from now. When are you planning your programs? Would you like to set a 3-part series over 6 months or something?
Well, that sounds like a volunteer. So I've got your initials down here.
But I do with Carolyn.
Again, if you want to take this worksheet, seriously, and just maybe quickly go through and highlight the ones that say, community education, you can make a very quick list of the 10 subjects, right? And that would be super powerful, right? Because then it gives them, like, they might be struggling for ideas, and it gives them a bunch of ideas that they would be willing to do.
So Craig, on this one of the education about water conservation, some of the things I'm getting from the green team relate to this kind of thing.
Yeah, I've got the nature center on here, the library. I guess I could throw the green team on here as a potential collaborator.
So Kathy, I will forward to you any of the stuff that I see then that relates to that, I guess.
So maybe actually going back to, Kathy, would you be willing to go through this worksheet and make a cribbed version of, here were the action items that specifically relate to education, so we have that?
Yeah, and you have a short list, and you would have a conversation looking forward to seeing if there was a series. Yes.
Yeah,
And
that
whether
would be
that
incredibly
series was
helpful.
adults, some of that could be towards adults, but they do young adult series and things as well. So,
You know, like right, you know, 2 rows down, again, we have the same thing, host an educational event on stormwater issues, you know,
Yeah.
there's another opportunity.
So yes, it's broader than water, but yes, I would take that on as a broad. And if another person would like to do it, so there was a conversation with, you know, a couple of people, that I'd be happy to ask for that kind of meeting.
Yeah, I mean, the first level would be like, let's get the list of things that we think that someone would be willing to
Yes.
educate someone about. And then it is, let's identify the collaborator that really would kind of take it over with some
Yes.
helpful cajoling from us, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Blue Origin is blasting off in 3 minutes and 40 seconds.
All right, so next item. This is employee training. So, well, maybe Ed, I'll ask you about this since it somewhat applies to your department. Have at least one municipal employee, such as a town manager, town engineer, public works department personnel, or other facilities maintenance personnel attend a training on LID green infrastructure practices. So shall I send you that PDF and you can say whether or not that's something that's feasible?
You're mute, Ed. Ed, you're mute.
You know, and it tells me I'm unmuted and I paid no attention to it. I should, I just check with Jeremy too.
Yep.
Maybe he's got somebody that's already done, you know, attended something like this. So maybe we can collaborate a little bit on it.
We may find another place here. You drew out here because there were a couple of places where I think this was some of what was added to Sustainable CT was to get sort of a municipal employee kind of engaged.
The orange text is kind of new to this year.
Yes.
So you can see the thing that is new to this year.
And I think the goal is to, and again, it was a week-long training session, but there are seminars and webinars and events to put some of the knowledge base and education and ownership on different departments. And there may be one somewhere else that's about housing. I don't know, you know, zoning or something.
Yeah, I'm sure there is.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. This is more of a PZC thing. I'm going to look into that. Now, this is an interesting one. Back to you again, Ed. Develop and implement an LID demonstration project with permanent signage in a high visibility location. To me, you know, we could do something like take the porous asphalt parking lot at Highland Farm, and if we develop some signage for it, maybe we get points for that, right? And so potential collaborators here, I have Parks and Rec and DPW for that project. And I'll follow up with you and Pam on whether or not that's possible. Last I heard, you go ahead.
Craig, is this just for public projects, or could these be private projects too? They may want to participate.
Yeah, so most of the Sustainable CT focus is to engage municipalities to push forward. And so my guess is this is primarily a project that the municipality was, you know, a primary partner on.
Okay.
But again, that would go into, you know, a careful read of the task item. And I think this one falls really under the same one. Then you get to this, establish a program to incentivize homeowners to implement blah, 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 blah. Now, what does that program mean and how you do it? And, you know, that's a fairly big pull, but it's a good idea. This was another one for you, Ed. I've noticed in the referrals coming from Darren, you're trying to track your connected and disconnected impervious area. And this particular one says reduce directly connected impervious area compared to a baseline year within the past 3 years. So if we're starting to track it, it might be that a year from now we can indicate that we've reduced it or not, depending on how the tracking goes. So I'd be curious, this is another one I'd be curious if this is something we're already kind of doing 80% of it, and if we just did the other 20%, we'd get points, you know?
I see that other 20 points is just time now, because we've started to track it, as you're aware of, over, I don't know, I know we put it maybe 6 to 8 months now we've been doing it.
Yeah. So I'll send you that. I'll send you and Darren that worksheet, and you guys can advise on whether or not it's something you want to focus on over the next year. These two are managed woodlands and urban forests. Again, you know, is this the Darien Land Trust? Is this the Tree Conservancy? Is somebody willing to kind of look at whether or not, you know, I don't know that we need to establish a forest advisory committee given the amount of woodland in Darien, but you know, I don't know if someone wants to look at these and see if it's a good idea or not. Have a volunteer to at least look at the worksheets.
I'll look
Okay.
at them. Oh,
Okay.
well,
Unless somebody else would
we
jump in.
can share, we can collaborate. So,
I'll take a look at those. 3.9.
Yeah. So the next section is facilitate invasive species education and management. Again, there's community education, but there's also municipal staff education. So, and what your thought is, you know, to me, there's a lot of BOE folks that maintain school grounds. There's park and rec folks that maintain the parks, and then you have some folks that maintain municipal properties. And you know, this would include educate municipal groundskeeping staff on invasive species management practices utilized by your municipality, engage in invasive species management practices on municipal properties, embed invasive species management practices into your grounds maintenance practices. You know, are these things something that, you know, fall under your department, Ed?
Yeah, the part about the work that we do on property, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, educating my staff on what we do. We have rolling training sessions throughout the whole year. Adding this to that list would not be a hardship for me. That's as long as I have something to guide me to what I need to show them and teach them. That I have no problem refreshing their memory every year. And like I said, we do it once a month right now with our training sessions.
All right, I'll send you the worksheets on those to see if it's easy or hard.
Yeah, Craig, and even going down where it says 310, about where your arrow is now on your municipal website, post invasive species education resources. So if there are some resources that can be posted on our website and used in training, you're kind of building that knowledge base. Pollinator Pathway may have some of that knowledge because they've been working a lot. I think some of the broader, not just Darien, but the broader Pollinator Pathway conversations have been on invasive species.
So I'm adding some volunteers as we go here, since that one said website, I put Pam's name there, and since I found another one that said educational workshop, I put your name there.
I know they just did something, so there may be some information that would allow Ed to have the resources to put in his whatever, you know, ongoing staff training.
So, well, yeah, this is a lot of stuff. So I want to get some bigger questions here. Promoting dark skies. I can talk to PZC about that. So here's another whole section, which is map tourism and cultural assets. And we actually started this process last time. Terry actually created a few spreadsheets to identify these items. But I would be looking for a volunteer to kind of look at this whole section and decide, where this fits and who would be its champion. It's interesting.
I'll take a look at it. It's fine.
Yeah, okay.
You can put me down. I'll take a look at it.
And just decide, are there potential collaborators? Is it something we should pursue, or is it not applicable or worth the investment of time? So yeah, I'll complete this offline and send folks reminders. And then there's this whole section about arts and culture program for youth. I mean, I think we have one. Again, this is one of those things that I think we do through what's the name of the arts?
Darien Art Center.
Yeah, right under the town hall, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. GAC. Yeah, I can look at all these ones.
Okay.
It's probably an overlap, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll nominate you for category 4 largely, and you can kind of advise on what makes sense in that category.
Yep.
I have a bunch of stuff to talk to planning and zoning about. If it just makes sense for me to talk to them if there's something, I was assuming that developing agricultural friendly practices is probably not something that's particularly applicable to the town of Darien. Holding a farmer forum is within our area. Climate vulnerability assessment. It's interesting. There were a couple of things at the library last year that touched on this, and I forgot who was the lead on those. If you guys remember.
The Darien Land Trust, and they did some work with, I think, Yukon, or I may be able to find those, but I think they worked with Yukon. It started with the Land Trust hosting a discussion on climate resilience.
So
we may have put it in the last one.
We did, yeah.
So the names of the people in our last application as a place to start.
Okay, so I'll just throw your initials on here to kind of just look into it.
I'll look them up.
Then we have section 5.5, which has to do with historic resources, right? So, the first thing that comes to mind there is the Museum of Darien. And again, there's an education thing there, right? That's like something that's going to pop out, and I'm sure they're doing educational workshops all the time. Let's see. This is a PZC and building thing. So let's see, let me look at what's 6. I'm going to jump to 7 just to get your opinion for some of the folks that were on when we were the energy task force. So there's a whole bunch of stuff on energy here, from benchmarking and tracking energy usage, reducing energy across all municipal buildings. We did a lot of work on this a few years ago as the Energy Task Force. But at the time, there was the Green Energy Fund, which was created from a fee on your electric bill. And the energy companies in Connecticut, Eversource for us, were engaged with full-time employees to work with municipalities and create these energy reports for them. Then the Clean Energy Fund was fleeced by the legislature to balance the budget, and all of those resources went away overnight. So it's not a fee for clean energy anymore. It's a tax that goes to the general fund, or at least it did at that one time. I don't know what the status of this is, but it was a tremendous amount of work. We learned a lot. We have a lot of information, but in my mind, it's not worth doing that tremendous amount of work again If there's another category 7 item we can get credit for. We learned that reducing energy use on all town buildings by 10% is kind of a Herculean task. We tend to have newer facilities that tend to have newer systems that tend to be in pretty good shape. It did help us identify the police station as a building to focus on because it was using a lot more energy than its square footage indicated that it should be. And we did focus on the police station and we did make changes there. We're looking to see those results over the next year. I think the one item under here that I would say we should pursue, but again, it unfortunately costs money, and this was our barrier last time. We found out that a number of our buildings could achieve an Energy Star rating. But to actually go through the process of saying, here's the building, here's the energy it uses, here I'm a consultant that is verifying the information and submitting a registration fee, costs money and lasts for 1 year. The town didn't see the value of going through a registration process to validate something that already existed. So basically you're paying money to get these points. And so I think it's still good because you can say, here's all these Energy Star rated buildings and you can put a sign up and you can get some PR out of it. But it is clearly literally paying money to get these points. But ultimately, we've got to do something. We did a lot of stuff on our energy last time, right? Like we had a lot of buildings have replaced their interior lighting. We did pretty much all exterior lighting across the entire town a few years ago was replaced. So I don't think there's opportunities for us there. Holding sustainability events, any of these educational seminars or sustainability events. And this just gets into the tracking of them.
Right. Is there anything with I'm looking at 7.4, I was trying to follow you where it says like including Board of Education. So, yes. I mean, obviously, I don't know where improvements might still exist in the school buildings that aren't the police department or town hall. Is that a place to look?
Yes. I mean, it's pretty much the same story there. And Mike Lynch is the director of facilities for all the Board of Ed buildings, was very involved in the couple of years we went through this process because I think he was also interested in the results. He has been guided by saving money and he has done a lot in the schools to make systems more efficient. Whether it was replacing interior lighting, exterior lighting, whether it was replacing HVAC units, variable speed motors, all those sorts of things. He's done a lot of it and continues to chip away at it. So there wasn't, we certainly, my impression after having gone through the process was that we weren't neglecting our infrastructure, right? We were continuing to annually invest in it. It wasn't like we had these old bare of buildings with old oil burners in the basement, that weren't addressed for 30 years. I think all of our schools now are on natural gas versus oil. So it's something that has been done because there's been
and the light bulbs moved out and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. Motion sensors and, the low-hanging fruit has been done. To really make a dent, you have to do, improved insulation, which is a massive construction project. And
sure.
And he does when he replaces roofs, they put better insulation under the new roof membrane, right? Like, so they do these things on a rolling fashion.
So there may be something we don't know that would count, or there may not be.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we've rolled past 1 o'clock. I'll send this now updated spreadsheet out to folks. But again, the task is to at least get through the whole thing and decide, here are the 27 tasks that we should be focusing on, right? We're gonna take the list of 100 down to a smaller, more manageable, more targeted list, and then we'll have something to work towards over the next year. Any other questions? Oh yeah, you were talking about housing, Kathy. I'll just touch on that while we're here. There's a section on design and implement an affordable housing plan. Interestingly enough, we did an affordable housing plan in 2009. We're not going to get credit for it, it's too old, but I think there's a requirement that we do another one in the next year. And if we're doing it anyway, I'm going to send these PDFs to Jeremy Ginsburg and say, well, as long as we're doing one, can we make sure it's going to qualify for points?
Yeah, right.
Growing affordable housing options. We have the Royal, which came online now within the last year.
Hey guys, I have to jump. I'm getting pinged left and right by my office. I don't think I can stay any longer with installing them. Sorry.
That's okay. Understood.
Okay.
The Royal came online, which is another 55 units of affordable housing. So that might move the needle enough on the town percentage, again, to qualify us for points. If I recall last time, if you could move the amount of the percentage of affordable housing in your community by 0.25%, you got points for it. All right, so I'll stop because this is a very deep rabbit hole. But thank you for the progress. Feel free to review it yourselves and see which things, again, speak to you, right? What relates to you in terms of the stuff that you've been focused on and the people that you talk to. And I'll do the same. And then I'm going to start shooting some emails out to people like Ed and Jeremy and Pam Gary to say, here are some things I found, are you guys able to participate over the next 12 months?
And are you going to send Carolyn's presentation? Carolyn, or
yes,
you going to send your impressive at some point? I'd love to take a look at it.
Sure.
Simple.
Remember, it was created for fifth graders, Kathy.
That's why I liked it so much.
Carolyn, you could take that to the senior center. You could, that's an education program that you could do in a lot of different ways without redoing your artwork.
Sure.
The message is the message. It looked really nice. I'd just like to look at it.
Sure.
Congrats.
Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you for your time, everybody. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Craig.
Nice day.